Welcome back to Fatal Crime Confessions. We are a weekly true crime podcast where we discuss the evil, the sinful, and the inhumane. I'm your host, Ray Monique.
And I'm your co-host, Michael Banks.
So before we get into the house announcements and into today's case, I would like for everyone to join in with me and wish Michael a happy belated 24th birthday. Whoop whoop!
Thank you.
So this episode is pre-recorded. His birthday is November the 9th, so he can't tell you what it was like celebrating his birthday. But when that does happen, we'll let you guys know what we did. And it's Scorpio season. So into the house announcements. We do have a Patreon account. If you don't know what Patreon is, it is a monthly subscription where you get exclusive content. This content will not be found anywhere else but on Patreon. We have 3 tiers: the evil, the sinful, and the inhumane. The tiers range from $5 to $25. We already had 2 episodes up. Episode 1 is the Jeepers Creepers episode. It is based on the true story of Dennis DePoe, and his story is basically what the first movie of Jeepers Creepers is about. It literally mimics his crime.
He actually looks just like him too.
And the second episode is on Jennifer Daugherty. She was mentally disabled, and a group of, I believe, 7 people tortured her for numerous hours and killed her and just disposed of her body. So if you're interested in listening to those 2 episodes, go ahead and purchase a membership and officially become part of the FCC fan club and become an official confidant. Also, we will have a 3rd episode that will drop this month. Later on in November, it's only for the 3rd tier. It's for the inhumane tier. They get 2 episodes a month. So if you're interested in getting even more bonus content, go ahead and purchase the inhumane tier. In advance, we thank you for your purchase. Okay. So for all the people that are not new and are used to listening to our episodes, I like to start off the cases with a question. Do you watch Lifetime movies?
Every now and then with my mom.
So this case was actually turned into a Lifetime movie, and it ended up giving her the name the Blue-Eye Butcher.
The Blue-Eye Butcher.
So essentially, the movie is about a blonde-haired, blue-eyed woman who's in an abusive relationship, and she maliciously murders her husband and covers it up, and it's like a whole shit show. But you're about to find out all the details. So the Blue-Eye Butcher is Susan Wright. She is from Houston, Texas, and she made the headlines in 2003 for stabbing her husband, Jeff Wright, 193 times and then burying his body in the backyard. Ooh.
Was he recognizable once they found the body?
I don't know. Well, yeah, because you didn't stab him in his face.
190 times.
93.
I don't even think you can claim that as self-defense anymore. It's a bit obsessive.
Well, I'm gonna explain the legal stuff when we get to her trial, because there's some parts where she messed up her case. So, but regardless, 193 times, that's a lot of times to stab someone. That's a lot of energy to exert to stab someone, because you gotta remember, you're going through skin, you're going through fat, you're going through muscle, you're hitting bone.
Yeah.
That's a lot of stuff to go through. That's a lot of energy.
Yeah.
I don't like going to the gym. I couldn't imagine stabbing someone 193 times. So she was convicted of first-degree murder in 2004, and she's currently serving a 20-year sentence at a correctional facility in Gatesville, Texas, as of 2012. So it's a fairly recent trial. In her early life, she was born as Susan Wright on April 24th, 1926 in Houston, Texas. At the age of 18, she worked as a topless dancer at a gold club for 2 months.
She realized stripping wasn't for her.
She used the money she earned to enroll in a nursing program at a community college and found a job at a hair salon. According to Susan, it became too time-consuming and expensive, so she quit. In 1997, while working at a restaurant as a waitress in Galveston, she met Jeff Wright, and they married in 1998. While she was 8.5 months pregnant with her son, Bradley. So we talked about her early life. Let's mention Jeff. He had spent his teen years in his adulthood partying with friends, binging on alcohol and cocaine. But as he hit his 30s, he quickly started to decide he wanted to settle down with a wife and kids once he met Susan, who he considered the one. His background with alcohol and cocaine will come up later on.
I mean, obviously.
A few years later into their marriage, they had a daughter named Kaylee. Susan claimed that her husband began to abuse her during the first few years of their marriage. 4 years into the marriage, Jeff wasn't partying as much as he once was, but he still every once in a while enjoyed partaking in his alcohol and cocaine.
Snort a little. He liked the party.
Susan hated it when he was high because Jeff was too aggressive with her and with the children. She would later tell stories of being kicked, punched, slapped while Jeff was in his coke-fueled rages.
That's no surprise.
So let's talk about the crime. According to the evidence presented by the prosecution, on Monday, January 13th, 2003, Jeff was riding another cocaine high. He was playing with their son, Bradley, and they were play fighting. Jeff had hit his son a little too hard in the face. Bradley began crying, and Jeff was sure of another lecture from Susan was about to happen. He was glad when she seemed to not have noticed and kicked back to enjoy the last few hours of his high. After the kids had been tucked into bed and were sound asleep, wow, use words, Jeff was a little surprised to look up and see Susan standing in the doorway of their bedroom wearing only a silky bathrobe.
Oh, she's getting sexy for him.
She didn't have to speak a single word for Jeff to turn off the TV and get off the couch. When Jeff entered the bedroom, he found the room aglow with red candles and soft music playing in the background. As they began to kiss, caress, and undress, Susan suggested that Jeff lay down on the bed. Susan tied her husband Jeff to their bed and stabbed him 193 times with 2 different knives.
Damn, so I'm assuming from this whole thing, like, it was premeditated. Like, she been like, I'm gonna kill this motherfucker. And I feel like it just took her a long time to build up the courage to actually do it. Or something just like broke the camel's back.
I'm not gonna address that yet. I'm gonna wait until I go into terminology and start explaining stuff.
Oh.
So, after she killed him and stabbed him 193 times, she called her in-laws that lived 150 miles away in Austin. She cried as she told them that earlier in the evening, Jeff had returned home from boxing lessons in a rage. She said he'd taken out his anger on her and Bradley. His parents were shocked at what they were hearing and asked to speak to their son. Susan told them they couldn't because Jeff had stormed out of the house and left. Susan said she was certain Jeff had left her for good. When her mother and father-in-law asked what had set him off, Susan replied, rather frankly, drugs, and proceeded to tell them about the cocaine and marijuana and the debt he'd run up trying to keep up with his habit.
Damn.
It was the first the couple had ever heard about their son using drugs since he married 4 years ago.
Man, so I mean, that's right. I'm really liking this premeditated word right now. She playing that shit.
So, after she's finished speaking with her in-laws, she then buried his body in their Houston backyard. Susan decided she would use the hole Jeff had dug for the fountain to put his body. Finally getting momentum by grabbing his ankles, she dragged him through the house to the patio, then pushed him into the grave, but he had unknowingly dug for himself.
That's fucked up.
She attempted to cover up the crime scene by painting the bedroom. Susan began cleaning up the blood, beginning with the path of the blood from the bedroom to the patio. She put the bloody sheets into a garbage bag and tossed the bloody mattress into the backyard while trying to figure out what she wanted to do with it later on. Then she loaded the kids into the car, ran a couple errands, including stopping by the hardware store to pick up a couple gallons of paint. Every spare moment between caring for the kids and the dog, Susan worked at cleaning up the crime scene. Pause. So these kids ain't see this blood? I know it was like a pool of blood in the house.
I know, right? 193 times you dragged them through the house.
Every artery and vein was punctured.
You dragged them through the house, and like me as a kid, I'd have said, "Mom, what's that?" And she'd have told.
It would be one thing, like, you know how my parents' house is. If like my mom was to do this, we would never know unless we went into the bedroom because the backyard is right there.
Yeah.
But she went from upstairs, dragged him down the stairs. God knows how far the end of the stairs is to the backyard. And then she just threw the mattress in the backyard. Like, the kids didn't want to play. Like,
I mean, so look, I kind of like, if my mom would have did something like this, and I asked her, "Mom, where does blood come from?" And she'd have told me something like, "Mind your motherfucking business." I'd have been like, okay. And then, like, not even worried about it no more.
what?
Yeah.
I don't know. I'll be kind of suspicious if I ain't see my dad. And also, I'm assuming his car was still outside.
Probably.
So then it'll make it even more suspicious. But her kids are babies, so.
Yeah, they was young. It's not like they was teenagers.
They didn't really know no better. But during this whole cleanup situation, Jeff's parents had spent the night very sleepless, waiting for a call or a visit from their son. But it never happened, obviously. He was dead. As morning came and went, the Wrights, his parents, called Susan and asked if Jeffrey had ever returned home. She told them yes, he had returned home to collect his clothes, and they had wound up in a shouting match. Jeff was so angry, Susan said, he took a bottle of bleach and shook it all over the bedroom in her clothing.
Susan is vicious.
But do you peep why she said that?
Uh-huh.
Why?
All the blood stains.
So she's trying to not make it seem like she covered up a crime scene. So they were to go to the police. That explains all the bleach. So his parents were starting to get a little confused and not understanding the story. And they became very desperate to talk with their son. But again, Susan told them that he forgotten his phone at where she was, at their house. That's why they didn't get no call. Susan also received calls from his boss and her neighbor. She told them the same story she told his parents. While Jeff's employer wondered what to do about a vital employee, the neighbor encouraged Susan to file a report about the abuse with the police. The next day, Susan filed a domestic abuse report in order to get a restraining order against her husband, intended to explain his absence. Words.
Yeah, Susan planned that shit probably for years too.
Susan walked into precinct 4 of Harris County Constable, I don't know, office. There she filed a report based on the same story she told everyone else and had her picture taken of the cuts and bruises on her hand. She told the police she was fearful of what would happen when her husband returned and discovered she reported the incident to police. She was granted a restraining order for her and the children. On that Saturday, Susan drove to her mother's home a few miles away. After Susan rambled on to her mother about restraining orders, cleaning up the house, and fear that Jeff would kill her if he returned, Susan was more confused than ever, her mother. Finally, she looked at her daughter and said, "Susan, did you kill Jeff?" With a slight nod of the head, Susan slumped forward and put her head on the table. At her mother's advice, Susan sent her children to stay with her sister Cindy while her mother scrambled to retain the services of a criminal defense attorney.
So, like, it's crazy because it's like your mom knows you, like, you killed that boy, didn't you? That's crazy.
On January 18th, Wright asked her attorney, Neil Davis, to come to her home and admitted to stabbing her husband. Davis contacted the Harris County District Attorney's Office to inform them a body was buried under Susan Wright's house and that she had confessed to the crime. Susan turned herself in to authorities at the Harris County Courthouse on Friday, January 24th, and was arraigned on murder charges the following Monday. So, before I proceed on, I have a question.
Yeah.
So, you mentioned it's premeditated. But do you believe she was abused?
Do I believe she's abused?
Yes.
Maybe. I think he did. Because, like, it's no secret that drunks and people on drugs, like, they tend to lash out like that. So, it's a good chance he did. Yeah, I believe he did.
According to evidence during the 2010 punishment trial, it was shown that the prosecution's theory that Jeff was tied to the bed was not supported by the medical examiner who excavated the body. The medical examiner testified that Jeff had significant amount of cocaine in his body the night he died. So much so that Jeff's body did not metabolize all the cocaine.
Damn.
The cocaine evidence supported the defense assertion that Jeff was intoxicated the night of his death when he came home from a boxing class and punched his son. Woo. Jeff also has several knife wounds on his hands, forearms, back, and back of his legs, indicating defense wounds inconsistent with being tied to a bed.
I mean, if I was listening correctly, he was tied to the bed, right?
That was the story that people were saying, but it's not. It wasn't proven by the medical examiner, because if someone's tied to the bed, and it would leave abrasions and evidence that there was blood not circulating properly, so that when the medical examiner did the exam, it will be a lighter tone compared to the rest of his body, just like when you wear a wedding band,
like a tan. Yeah.
But that was like the story when people found out about, like, oh my god, she tied him to the bed.
That's so, like,
because they were saying she was sex crazed and da. So she was trying to be kinky. So she tied him to the bed so he couldn't move and da.
So what the hell really happened?
Well, she stabbed him. He wasn't tied to the bed.
Damn.
So the trial. Only 13 months after her arraignment, Susan's murder trial commenced on February 24, 2004. She had already pleaded not guilty to killing her husband by reason of self-defense. Susan's prosecutor and defense attorney had very different portrayals of her. Assistant District Attorney Kelly Siegler depicted Wright as a scheming wife who seduced her husband into bed, tied him up, and repeatedly stabbed him and then buried his body in their backyard, all in hopes of collecting a $200,000 life insurance policy.
I knew they was going to throw that in there if they had one.
Susan's defense attorney, Neil Davis, claimed that his client has suffered years of physical and emotional abuse by her husband and killed him to protect herself and her 2 children.
Mm-hmm.
At her trial, Susan testified in her own defense. In her emotional testimony on the stand, Susan claimed, "I couldn't stop stabbing him. I couldn't stop. I knew as soon as I stopped, he was going to get the knife back and he was going to kill me. I didn't want to die."
Oh, so she feel like, I gotta make sure I killed this motherfucker.
It's either you or me.
Yeah.
And it ain't gonna be me. She testified that on the night of the murder, Jeff was on a cocaine binge and was violent, having allegedly beaten her. Susan once again persisted that she stabbed her husband in self-defense. Susan's mother, along with others, testified for the defense, claiming they witnessed Susan's bruises. ADA Siegler was not impressed by Susan's statements. Siegler believed that Susan's tears were faked for the jury's benefit. While presenting their case, the prosecution presented an unusual demonstration by bringing up Susan's actual bed into the courtroom. Like, literally bought the bloody mattress with the man's blood on it still in the courtroom, and had her the ADA had her co-counsel get on the bed. She got on top of him and pretended to stab him.
So what was that to prove?
It was a theatrics. It's something that ADAs or attorneys in general do to get a rise out of the jury. They're like, oh my God, it's to make him look like this is what really happened. This is as close as you gonna get to seeing what happened. And it's very unprecedented to bring crime scene evidence into the courtroom. Like, yeah, you'll bring a gun or a knife from a crime scene, but it's still in the evidence bag. Like,
bloody mattress,
bed frame and all was in the courtroom.
What they needed a bed frame for.
So during closing arguments, Siegler brought up to the jury how Wright had been a topless dancer and believed that Susan's emotions were insincere. She contended that Susan was a card-carrying, obvious, no doubt about it, caught red-handed, confirmed, documented liar. That's her words.
Damn.
Who frequently shows emotion during the trial while deliberate efforts to influence the jury. Susan's defense never strayed from their claims, however, that Susan had stabbed her husband to death in order to protect herself and her children. So now I'm going to come in with psychology and all that, just to explain some things. So, like was stated, the trial took place in 2004, and there's a term in criminal psychology known as battered woman syndrome, which is basically to explain what happened with Susan. And like I said, I'm going to explain where she messed up. I should be giving tips, but just to educate the folks.
Educate us.
Battered woman syndrome is when a woman that is in a domestic situation, she commits murder of her abuser, but the killing usually happens in a latent period. It happens mostly when things are good.
That's weird.
And like things are fairly good, and like the day that like they commit the murder, they either like say something or do something where it's like, oh shit, it's gonna start again.
Oh, so it basically is like she feel like he might do it again.
Yeah, so in my opinion, for her, that breaking point was, he hit my son. It's a wrap. I can't keep doing this. Yeah. So it is a legal defense to use battered woman syndrome. It is a real thing. Like, everyone that understands domestic violence or has worked with domestic violence victims knows that it's not easy to leave. It's either you die or they die. It's very rare you leave unscathed. Because if you do leave, you ain't got no money. You're in a homeless shelter and things like that.
Yeah.
She got 2 kids. She ain't got time for that. We just gonna get rid of him. I'm all for do what you gotta do. So I'm for the defense. So where she messed up was she should have just called the police as soon as she killed him. It's hard for people to believe self-defense when you start covering up the crime scene and you start messing with evidence.
Yeah.
Because obviously, as I said, her family members testified she was abused. They saw the bruises. It's not like she was lying that she was getting beat, but you started to cover up.
It made it seem like the murder was more than you defending yourself.
Yeah, so she would have just called the police as soon as it happened.
Yeah.
Or like, say she didn't call the police, but like her kids woke up, they saw her like in a haze, like say she was in the corner of the bedroom, like rocking back and forth in a haze, like in disbelief.
Yeah.
And her kids called the police or something like that. It's more believable. So that's where she messed up. You started covering things up, making up new stories. Now people believe in these stories. And then they started bringing up your background of you being a topless dancer. Your case starts falling apart.
Yeah.
And of course, in 2004, people didn't believe in battered woman syndrome. It wasn't a common thing.
Mm-hmm.
Like, the term was already out, but of course, psychologists believe it, but you gotta make
everybody else believe it.
You need the legal world to understand it and believe it. If they don't believe it, it don't matter. So that's the little spiel I had. But to the verdict. On March the 3rd, 2004, after only 5.5 hours of deliberation, Susan's jury convicted her of murder. Yes, she committed a crime. I expect her to do time. I don't think anyone that believes in the battered woman syndrome expects them to get no time at all, but is of the belief that they're acting in their defense, and that's the only way they saw fit
to defend themselves.
Yeah, so they usually get a lighter sentence, or they get mental help. So like help deal with the trauma and things like that. So, in a sharp contrast to her emotional testimony during the trial, Susan showed little to no reaction when the verdict was released. She was like stone face.
I'm like, oh hell nah.
The following days of Susan's sentencing, prosecutors were hoping for at least a 45-year sentence.
Damn.
While her attorneys argued for probation for the client. I think probation is a stretch.
Yeah.
Like, you tried it 5 years, 10 years. Probation, you're bugging.
Serve a few years, come home on good behavior.
Yeah. In the end, the jury met in the middle, sentencing Susan with 25 years in prison. In 2005, she went to the Court of Appeals of Texas in Houston and to appeal her conviction, and they upheld it. She also reappealed in 2008. This time, she had a new witness by the name of Misty McMichael, the wife of a former NFL Super Bowl champion Steve McMichael, and ex-wife of Jeff. She came forward to tell her story about how she endured abuse and violence during her 4-year relationship with Jeff. So he's like a serial abuser.
Yeah, he pretty much does to everybody he's in a relationship with.
Do you know who Steve McMichael is?
No.
Uh-huh. In 2009, the Texas Court of Criminal Appeals granted Wright a new sentencing hearing after determining that Susan's counsel rendered an ineffective assistance during the punishment phase of the trial in 2004. On November 20th, 2010, Wright was resentenced to 20 years in prison, 5 years less than her original sentence. Bearing another appeal, she'll be eligible for parole on February 8th, 2024, when she'll be 48 years old.
Oh, man. She ain't that old.
She was young. Because when they got married, she was like 24 years old.
Oh.
Yeah. So in 4 years, she may get out.
Oh, that's good.
I will say, Jill done did it to her. Because she ain't aged good at all.
I mean, Geraldine is going to do it to anybody.
No, like, she was really pretty before she went in. And now she look like she's 60. 65. Like, she aged bad.
Yeah, she didn't age good at all.
Like, they done did it to her in there. But I'm not, this is the second time we talking about Texas. I wouldn't be surprised what their prisons is like at all.
Yeah.
Because they have a lot of people on death row and stuff, so.
We know about Texas.
They probably going through it in there. So to end it off, like I said, Lifetime made a movie called The Blue-Eyed Butcher that came out in 2012, starring Sarah Paxton and Lisa Elston. The movie is actually really good. My issue with it, now that I have a psychology mindset, because I watched it before I even knew I wanted to get into psychology, they glamorized her too much. Because actually at the end of the film, spoiler alert, at the end of the film, she she's meeting with her attorney, I guess, to talk about her appeal, and she's like putting on lipstick, and she's like, do you like how I look? Do I look good in red? Like, trying to flirt, like they're giving her, it was like they're imposing that she had a personality disorder. And I was just like, that wasn't the issue though. I don't know this woman, but I feel like it was getting away from the real point, which was what I made earlier, which was the battered woman syndrome and that she was being abused.
Yeah.
That's my only issue with the film, but what can you expect for Lifetime? They're not therapists. They don't care. They want their money.
Yeah.
But that is the case of The Blue-Eyed Butcher. And let's get into our segment. It was named Horror Movie of the Week, but I decided to change it to Recommendation of the Week. Because there's thriller movies, there's suspense movies, there's thriller and suspense TV shows. There's so much stuff we could recommend that people would like. And I don't feel like we should limit ourselves.
Facts.
So today's recommendations are Michael's. So go ahead.
So my first recommendation of the week is, I'm pretty sure you guys watched this movie before, or at least heard of this movie. It's a pretty popular movie. You know, it got its own movie franchise, and it's going to be Silence of the Lambs. It's Jodie Foster. She's a top FBI student at the agency, and she's sent to interview Dr. Hannibal Lecter. And while she's sitting there and getting to know Hannibal and all his horrendous crimes, she discovers that he may have insight on the case. So basically, she try to get him to give her what he knows, and it's very suspenseful. Like, if you like suspense and if you like being on the edge of your seat, this is the movie for you.
I love cases about people who kill people to eat them. I know that sounds sick, but their mind just fascinates me. Like, it's one thing that you're killing people, but then to go and eat them is like a whole nother level of sick. And that's why I love the Hannibal, like, movies in general, because he's just so sick and he plays his role so well. Oh, but to piggyback off of that, which is like following in the same tracks, there is a show that's out called Prodigal Son, which is about a guy who, he's a profiler, basically what I want to eventually become, and he his father is a serial killer. And he was a doctor just like Hannibal Lecter, and he's in a mental institution, and his son like is the one who turned him in. And he was only like 10 when he turned him in, and he has his own like mental problems going on. Like he has to chain himself to the bed when he's sleeping, because he like has these crazy dreams and whatnot. And he's like working with his dad on cases so that he can like understand the mind of a serial killer. It's amazing. And if you loved Scandal, one of the actors in Scandal is in that show. She played First Lady. So that's my little add-in to this week.
My second recommendation, I don't know if you guys saw this. I mean, if you have, you'll understand. It's kind of a tearjerker. I mean, I ain't cracked. You know, I ain't.
I personally don't like the movie.
It's called The Lovely Bones, where a teenage girl is murdered by her neighbor, and basically throughout the movie it's her, I guess it's a ghost or whatever, basically solving her own murder. And it's crazy because like how you thinking like throughout, you were just watching the movie and you thinking that, oh, she's still alive, and then kind of find out that day she went into that little hole was the last day on earth. So it's a crazy movie. It's a bit of a tearjerker if you're a crybaby like Ray, but it's a good movie.
Stop talking crap about me. There's nothing wrong with crying, people. Show your emotions. So that's it for the recommendations of the week. And before we close out, don't forget to go to fatalcrimeconfessions.com and look at today's episode. It'll have the pictures from the actual trial with the mattress and all that, links to where I got my research from, and you can always leave a comment on those episodes, so feel free to do that. Also go to the website and submit a case that you are so invested in and you would love for us to talk about. Go ahead and submit a case, and it could possibly be one of our next episodes. And finally,
want to talk to you guys about our Twitter account. You know, we just started it. We brand new on Twitter, and we'll really be happy if you guys supported us on Twitter. You know, you can interact with us, you know, DM us, all that, comment on our posts. Our posts will be stuff about like daily news or like daily murders and stuff happening around the world,
missing persons, because
yeah,
of course we love talking about murder, but we don't want someone to end up on our episodes. We also post about the episodes when new episodes are coming out, and every now and then we'll post a funny meme or something like that to keep everything lighthearted. You know, pass a laugh on, because laughing is healthy for everybody. So thank you for tuning in, and to close out, happy birthday to you, happy birthday to you, happy birthday dear Michael, happy birthday to you. Don't come in on me about my singing. I know I can't sing.
I was actually about to thank you.
I was talking about you. I was talking about them. But thanks for tuning in, and we'll see you guys next week. Bye.
Thanks for listening to the Fatal Crime Confession podcast. Check back next week for a new episode. You can also find us at fatalcrimeconfessions.com or on Instagram at Fatal Crime Confessions. Please subscribe, rate, and comment to express how much you love the content. Thank you.